And you're listening to a Token Nerd Network podcast. 3, 2, 1. Where we ramble on about geeky things. Things ranging from Batman to pop figures to Star Wars.
From Token Nerd Podcast.
Stay spicy, my friends.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Token Nerd Podcast, where we ramble on about geeky things ranging from Batman to pop figures to Star Wars. I'm Anthony Pettiford, and I'm here with a weird crossover event. In the very beginning, the dawn of the Token Nerd, it was me and Travis. And then Travis went on.
Now it's someone that looks like Travis.
Now, yeah, basically I replaced Travis, a man with a beard, with another man with a beard.
With a darker beard.
A darker beard. Yeah, good for you.
I know.
All
Good
right,
for me having a darker hair.
Yeah. Well, we're here with Ben. So Ben from Urban Vinyl Daily.
I am from Urban Vinyl Daily.
So
RIP blog. Now we're just a podcast.
yeah, so it's completely over now, right? Not over, but is the site still there?
The site is on private, and I'm assuming people know by now that our interviews that we did, that we spent a whole bunch of time on, are being ported over to another blog. I think we've announced that it's the Toy Chronicle. They've been working on it.
Okay.
And so our rationale for that is as easy for us as it would have been to just dump everything and kind of walk away from it. There were a lot of artists that we caught either early on in their career before they took off, or kind of luminaries in the scene before they quit the scene. So it's that weird juxtaposition of if we dropped this and it just was not there, it would have created I guess a hole of sorts, if you want to actually put any stock into us doing the effort.
Mm-hmm.
That parts of artists' careers would either be gone from a record or stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, when I first met Travis and you, it was the blog was the big thing.
Yeah.
I actually met Travis because we were working, me and John Asher were doing the Dynamic Buzz for a college project, and that's how we met Travis, through teaching us how to use WordPress.
And we stole John to be our cinematographer one time.
Yeah. Actually, when I think back to it, I think I did the first UVD interview. You guys, me and Travis were at C2E2 2012, I think, 2012 or 2013.
Something like that. I know we had John with us one of the years, and he just did a little blurb for 15 seconds.
Yeah. Were you? No, you weren't at the.
No, I wasn't
at
at that
first year. You guys went the year afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I missed all the memories of you guys huddled up in a hotel room.
Oh, those were the days. And then it just got weird. I think my second year we went with my cousin and his wife, and while we were there, I definitely got
AIDS?
Oh, shh! Don't tell people. No,
all right, we'll say herpes then.
Yeah. No, so Addison Lee, who does Real Film Geeks and is on our podcast all the time, we went, and Addison has a weird personality, whereas he doesn't drink here at home.
Okay.
He has a sip here and there, but he never drinks.
That sounds like a waste of a beer if he's only having a sip.
Yeah. And so when we were at C2E2, he feels comfortable enough because he doesn't have to drive anywhere. So he will go to the bar and hang out with people.
Oh.
Addison goes from being very monotone and like locked up in a shell to being the most social butterfly. I went down to the bar, and he's down there just talking to people. At one point, my favorite story is we're sitting at a table talking, and Scott Snyder, who writes the Batman stories, like Killing Joke, Night of the Owls, all those.
Not to be confused with Zack Snyder?
No, he can actually put good stories together. And Addison goes, Scott Snyder?
Scott!
Yeah, and so he pulls him over, and Scott Snyder comes up to talk to us, and Addison goes, listen, man, tell me, I respect you and your work. Pitch me a movie. If you could make a movie right now, pitch it to me. And Scott was a really cool guy and was like, okay, and then pitched Addison a movie right there. We were just like, this isn't real.
Was it a movie about different colored bears that could shoot stuff out of their stomachs?
No, a Super Care Bear movie.
I know.
But that actually kind of brings us to the topic of today. So for this podcast, I think we're going to call it Not Your Uncle Ben or Papa Ben.
I don't know. I don't want to be your daddy, and I don't want to be your uncle. So
We'll call it Papa Ben then. So, surprise, Ben over here is going to be a father.
yeah, in less than a month.
In less than a month. So we're gonna make it somehow. I'm gonna make this a thing where we're gonna have what will come first.
All right.
Your son or the Thor Ragnarok movie.
Thor.
Okay, that's one bet. That's one bet.
Yeah, I mean it's 8 days difference supposedly.
Yeah.
So.
I guess I'm not honestly hoping their child comes out early, just to point it out there, but I hate to lose.
I mean, at that point, it's baked for 39 weeks, so close enough to a due
who's
date.
taking it out early? It's fine at that point. But no, so it got me to think. So when you grew up as a child,
Which you and I are different ages, so.
yeah, just slightly. One of us is in their 40s. One of us is, just almost 30.
One of us is a baby at 22, and the other one's 31.
I'm actually 26. Thank you very much. But no, so growing up, what TV shows did you watch? What do you think? Because I feel like I was molded by the TV that I watched as a kid and kind of the culture that I grew up in. The phrase of being the 90s kid.
Yeah. So early on, I don't know if you are going to recognize many of these, but early on was super like Bozo the Clown sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
On PBS or whatever it was, and then there was like Eureka's Castle, which
I remember Eureka's Castle.
is not Muppets, even though for the longest time I thought it was Muppets because they look exactly the same, but not Jim Henson sponsored. There was like the Shining Time Station sort of stuff, which is Thomas the Tank Engine,
Mm-hmm.
with Ringo Starr and Eric Carlin, or not Eric Carlin, not the little hungry caterpillar one. What's his face, Carlin?
Mm-hmm.
George Carlin.
Wait, George Carlin.
Yeah, the comedian.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha.
No, I said Eric Carlin, which is the hungry caterpillar,
Yeah,
Arthur.
Eric Carl.
Carl. What else did I watch early on? Seems to be like Nickelodeon, PBS sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was Price is Right snuck in there just because.
Price is Right, Jeopardy, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think we watched Jeopardy. Otherwise, I mean, there were just a handful of shows. Otherwise, it was just outside kid sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Getting older, it was been like, I guess 10-ish and prior. It was like Rugrats sort of stuff. There was like All Real Monsters, Salute Your Shorts, Goosebumps, blah, blah, blah sort of stuff. The typical, like the prototypical 90s.
Yeah. So, and like we were talking about, so that's not what made you, but your humor was based off of those early shows.
Yeah.
And even now they're starting to remake it. So for me, it was Hey Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're getting ready to have a Hey Arnold movie coming out soon.
Yeah.
And it's been, I know I should look this up before, but it's been at least 15 years since because they made they made a Hey Arnold movie that went to theaters. And then I think that was in 2006, I want to say. But now here we are in 2017, and we're getting a Hey Arnold movie, it's a movie, TV movie, that will follow us finding Arnold's parents. But I think it's interesting that we're starting to bring that back.
2002.
2002? Okay. But the idea is that instead of making good TV, we're just going to bring back stuff. Like, All Real Monsters was, I mean, for goodness sake, there was nothing else like it.
It's like Ren and Stimpy, and Rocco. Like, what parent in their good mind,
let their kids watch
lets
those?
their kids watch that? Yes, it's an anxious dog wallaby thing, a fat ass cow, a turtle, and a little smaller dog that are just like, how do you let a kid watch this along with like Ren and Stimpy that's like neurotic?
Mm-hmm. But it was the idea that no one knew what to look for back then. To sneak stuff is like when you hear all those Disney things, like there was a penis in Atlantis when you look at it,
Or sex
in the sky. No one knew to look there, and so now everyone is like pinpointed, like, oh, we're gonna catch it in the act. I'm not gonna have this subliminal messaging Dora the Explorer. Don't try to force your.
Even though she's not an explorer, she travels to known areas, which is not an explorer.
Good point. Dora the tourist guide.
Pretty much.
But no, so for me, I grew up with. I was the big Disney kid though, so I had DuckTales. What's this called? Tailspin, Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
Which Funko is making figures of those.
Yeah. Funko actually today, or not today, yesterday released the. I think it's the Disney Afternoon.
Yeah.
Like I think they're not reaction figures. I think they are reaction figures. Anyway, so you have Chippendale.
Yeah.
And then.
Only reason I know is because Travis brought it up yesterday when we did the weekly wrap up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, Darkwing Duck. Have you seen the new DuckTales show?
No.
Okay, so Disney XD has released a new DuckTales series. It's good. I don't know if you were a DuckTales person to begin with.
Yeah.
Okay. It's completely different. It follows the same thing. You still have Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, Louie, and then Webby. But in this one, Donald Duck is in it. So it's more like the comics.
Okay.
Isn't it called like an uncle and his nephews or something like that? Or Duck and his nephews.
Okay.
So it follows that a little bit closer. And so like a lot of shows nowadays, there is the slapstick episode, but there's also the overarching plot.
Okay.
And so, to be honest, I haven't seen more than the first 2 episodes. I know there are more already out there. I just haven't had a chance to watch them. But I was very much engaged. And I know I think it was SDCC this year, they did a panel about it. No, it was a D23.
Okay.
And so the big Disney convention. And so they were talking about DuckTales. And they were saying, oh, are we going to see any of the other characters in the Duck universe? And so they said, yeah, there's a good chance that you're going to run into Darkwing Duck in this series.
Do they tagline it, "Let's get dangerous"?
No, I think he said, he did the whole bit. He was like the terror that flaps in the night. But if you look at Webby in this one, isn't the squeaky little like sister character.
Okay.
She is actually like the outgoing one. And so if you look at her, she has a wall of like conspiracies, and I think there's I forget which 2 villains, but there are 2 Darkwing Duck villains on her board. So that's their little tie that I forget I'm honestly forgetting what city Darkwing Duck is from. But anyway, like
Is it Duckburg? Like
no, Duckburg is where the
Scrooge is.
Yeah. Oh man, it's gonna drive me crazy. Where did I put my phone at? But no, it's but all that stuff's gonna be connected, and that's kind of the big thing that we've moved into this kind of in recent times. Everything's part of a universe, down to the TV shows with Arrow and the CW stuff, and even CW's Riverdale. I don't know if you've been able to watch that at all.
No.
They're gonna bring Sabrina the Teenage Witch into it, but it's not Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It's like the demonic Sabrina, like she's fighting her way through demons and stuff. It's Sabrina and Buffy basically mixed together. But but to the main point of what I was trying to get at is, so we had the things that we grew up with, and as I've gone on, I've noticed that kids don't have anything currently to watch. With your child coming on the way,
Okay.
what are the key things that your child should watch? Like, if do you already have like that movie list of what you're going to show your son? For example, are you going to let him watch the Star Wars movies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or that's a common question, but
Yeah.
has someone already asked you this?
No.
Okay, well, I'm glad to be your first.
I'll start off the answer in a different way. As far as TV shows, like, or really anything in general, it's that weird position to be in where, like, obviously you want your kid to be current and relevant with what other kids are probably going to see, but it's that pang of having things that, like, I liked or people of our general snowflakey millennial generation liked. So it's like that weird, like, juxtaposition of, like, give them new stuff that isn't going to rot their brain. Like, give them some Baby Einstein sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like, show them, like, the old X-Men cartoons that made 0 sense. Which, even looking back on them, like, at the time, they were amazing. But, like, watching it as an adult, it makes no sense.
Yeah.
Stuff like... I don't know if, like, you watched it, but on the WB, there was a show called Hysteria.
Yeah.
which is an interesting show. Like in principle, rewatching it, it's okay-ish. Like it's pretty
It was like a
still pretty funny. It's nutty. It's
like Animaniacs
Yeah.
almost, but didn't have the central
yeah.
link.
So there's stuff like that like I would find funny, and who knows like whether it like crosses that barrier of if someone else is gonna find it funny that either like didn't watch it as a kid, like the old like Ninja Turtles cartoons.
Yeah.
Nostalgia for me may look dumb as shit to someone who is seeing it for the first time.
That's a good point. Like if you think about Street Sharks,
Mhm.
I think it would be cool if we did a recap of like Street Sharks, like
Yeah.
episode by episode. But to a lot of people, they would think that just is a stupid premise. That
Yeah.
wouldn't make any sense.
And like I saw someone that I'm Facebook friends with that is older than I am, and he wanted to buy like one of those retro NES, Super NESs, and his daughter, who's probably 5 or 6 or whatever, is like, "What the hell are you smoking?" sort of stuff. Like we don't want this. When the guy's like, like it's cool, like, and the kid's like, "No." So it's like that weird like cross between like what I think is cool and want to show kid, whether it's my kid or just the general kid population, and just trying to keep up with not holding them back
Yeah.
and keep them relevant with what's going on.
Well, unfortunately, you can't even compare. Like speaking of the NES and stuff like that, the games now you can't even compare what we played on the system to what's on a phone.
Yeah.
I've been playing. It's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Legacy Wars. I tried to get you to play it one night.
Yeah, you showed me it.
And it's amazing
Mhm.
in the graphics and everything. We just now those are you can download those for free and spend extra money on bonuses.
Yeah.
But think about what we were playing. Like Yoshi's Island was the game.
I don't think kids these days are going to understand Super Ghost and Ghouls and how much of a struggle that game is.
No, back when they had to make cheat codes just for you to progress.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore.
Or even having to like fight through a regular black and white Game Boy.
Mhm.
Like that was the best you had. Like
Yeah.
you had a stick and a Game Boy. That's all you had.
Back in when I first had the Pocket, you could adjust the color, or not the color, but the contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you'd have to find the perfect lighting.
Mhm.
I remember thinking that you couldn't be in the sun for too long because it would kill your battery. Not
Yeah.
true, but
Whatever.
Trying to keep holding a flashlight between your shoulder and your head. Yeah, things like that. They'll never understand.
Kids will never understand.
No. Oh, it's fun to say that though. But let's jump over to Star Wars.
All right. Yeah, I got away from that.
But here, how this? When do you? Because Abby and I have talked about this before. Like, if I had a son when Batman v Superman came out, to sound like a bad person, I probably would have taken a small child to see it. Because I felt like that would have been my bonding experience, even though it wouldn't. I realized it was a terrible idea.
Yeah, and that's kind of the same philosophical debate of where you start a child with a Batman franchise. Like, do you start with Tim Burton? Do you start with like Seal, or do you start with Christopher Nolan?
I would.
Or do you even start with Adam West?
I would start with Adam West, honestly. But now there are cartoons. Brave and the Bold is something I would start with. I grew up watching, like most people, the animated series, and so that's what I knew, and that kind of like led me to the deeper, more. And when I got older, I paid more attention to how much art and style went into it. But I think Brave and the Bold would have been a good one for my kids. But no, live action stuff. It would have to be Adam West stuff until 7 or 8, and then I might show a Tim Burton one. Not just the first one, not Returns.
Yeah.
Returns is actually really scary.
Yeah.
If you think about it, not for kids. But when do you think is old enough for your son to watch Star Wars?
I think the premises of 4 through 6 are solid at most ages. It's the fantasy aspect of it because like in the 70s and 80s, like there just was nothing that you could really do other than have your kit and film it, sort of thing. There was no super special effects like you find 1 through 3 and 7 through the bazillion that they make of the Star Wars. But it's that for me, like 4 through 6 is that sense of adventure that I think any kid, male or female or whatever, can latch onto, is that sense of adventure, having a calling, and kind of
journey.
Just going on a journey and meeting some friends along the way. Whereas like 1 through 3, I don't know follows the same like Bill Dung's Ramon sort of like build the character up sort of stuff. Obviously, we've only seen 6, and we're working towards 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and whatever. So I can't really comment on how those are going to flush out.
Yeah. No, I like my parents, because when I was 6 is when they did one of the remasterings.
Yeah.
And so my parents let me watch. I think I watched 6 first, or sorry, I watched 5 first. So Empire first, and then I watched A New Hope, and then it took a while before they'd let me watch Return of the Jedi.
Okay.
Because that was the one that my mom considered to be like the darkest one, not Empire.
Yeah.
But she because there was more death, because like Vader dies in front of you, and it was just the interesting way of like her having to like that's how I got the death talk.
Okay.
And granted, I was older, like
Yeah.
I was 6. I mean, that's pretty old to have the death talk, but like that's when it made sense to me. Like, oh yeah, well this was his dad. His dad died, and he's not coming back except for when he's a ghost at the end. So
Which I wonder if you're a German family, like Lord Vader is obviously like super spoiler in the name itself. Like,
yeah.
how did that work in Germany? Or anyone
I
who
wonder if it translated like they called it something different instead of Vader. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example for an English word where we something with a big spoiler. I can't think of it off the top of my head. So I didn't get an actual H from you.
I think like 4 through 6, you could probably swing like a 5 or 6-year-old through it.
Okay.
With like the fact that 1 through 3 deals with like a Darth Maul, the beginnings of a Darth Vader, sort of darker, more in-your-face, realistic-ish stuff. Like you're not going to get too scared by Chewie. You're not going to get too scared by TIE fighters kind of casually whipping around. Darth Vader's not really that menacing other than choking someone and tossing him around a little bit. But
Darth
like,
Vader wasn't scary to me. Darth Maul was.
But like the Maul, I guess the beginnings of emo Darth Vader and stuff like that volcano scene would be kind of intense for a young person.
Yeah. If they could stay awake through the entire movie.
Yeah. But it's like stuff like that. You'd probably be touching 9 or 10 probably to be able, well, maybe 7 or 8. And I don't know really how 7 through 8 and 4 to really to flush out. Other than the fact that 7 or 8 looks kind of dark.
Yeah. So we're doing this podcast. It's Thursday, so we are just past New York Comic Con, and they released the final trailer for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, so Episode 8, and we just watched the trailer beforehand, and it looks great. It's dark.
Yeah.
Very dark. I mean, it's going to be good. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
I even enjoyed Force Awakens, and I know a lot of people wanted to, rant and rave. It's a remake. It's a copy, and it's like, okay, well, I enjoyed it.
Yep.
Finn was in it. There was a black guy. I can relate now.
And he didn't die within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
granted, Lando made it.
yeah, Lando.
I want to know where Lando is.
We'll have to find out maybe if he survived the whatever story jump this is.
Yeah. So the next question is: so you said younger ages can watch the originals, and then.
Yeah.
But if you could pick, would you rather have your kids go 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
I think 4, 5, 6 is fine with me as a starting point because like the entire storytelling, I don't know, is affected by watching them out of order. Other than like you can treat 1, 2, and 3 as like a flashback montage of how did we get to Vader?
Yeah.
Because I mean that's really what it is how did we get to Vader? 4, 5, and 6 kind of stand independent other than where did Vader come from sort of thing.
Addison, I forget what his name is. There's like, I think it's the Butcher cut.
Okay.
But it's like you watch 2, 1,
yeah.
3, or sorry, no, it's 2, 3, 1, 4, 5, 6. But it's like the idea that you look at is 1 is the flashback after Vader. So that's when you kind of get the pieces put together.
Yeah.
And then obviously you don't mess with the order of the originals. No, I've actually thought about that for a long time because I like the idea of like, oh yeah, your kid finally realizes that the main character turned evil. Do it at the end. But then you kind of lose the Luke, I am your father moment, and that's I don't know if you've ever watched like the YouTube videos of parents showing their kids that scene.
I
You've
don't
never
think
seen
so,
those?
but no.
Okay, yeah, there are reaction videos of parents who videotape their kids watching through the series, and when they get to that point, like their kids will go, "What?" And then like they double ask. It's cute. It's really cute. But no, so I've been debating it myself. I think I'm probably gonna end up doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll probably mature as I get older, but as of right now, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna throw my kid into every, we're gonna watch this Batman and this episode. And if you don't get it as a 5-year-old, that this deep episode was talking about, and that kind of stuff,
I
I'll
think
expect a lot from my
like
kids.
for me, the indie franchise is the one I kind of hold off on because it's weird. Like if you try to show anyone that's younger than maybe 9 or 10, like it's weird. Like
Indiana Jones.
yeah,
Yeah.
that whole like, regardless of which order they're shown in, it's like the whole monkey brain thing, the whole like sacrificing things, Nazis melting like wax. It's an odd principle to.
It's an old.
kind of,
Yeah, you're right. It's an older kid. I'd say 10. You're right. Maybe 9 as a third grader. I'd say here's a treat. But no, I agree. What other really good franchises are things I want my kids to watch? Oh, the Marvel movies. When do you think your kids are gonna be? Because a lot of people are like, "Oh, superheroes," but I mean, like Winter Soldier, like the Captain America movies are dark in comparison to like, I mean, Iron Man's a little bit brighter because you can get away with the bright colors of Iron Man's suit, but Captain America wasn't a friendly movie.
with those, I think you could push your way through them at most ages because I mean there's action in it and kids I don't suspect understand the extensive nature of most adult things. So like I mean here's Hulk smash blah blah blah. Obviously may not show them like the Eric Bana and Edward Norton Hulks out of principle, but but it's like even it'd be difficult to figure out the chronology of how to show the Marvel movies other than sequentially as far as years that they were released, how they came out. And they just kind of, it just has to ebb and flow. Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy throws us off a little bit. Yes, even though this ends up being Fox, Apocalypse throws us off a little bit. Days of Future Past throws us off a little bit. But it just, either it has to go as they were released or you just have to hodgepodge them together in like an Iron Man 1, 2, 3, Captain America 1, 2, 3, whatever, Avengers 1, 2, 15, whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I know with Abby's niece and nephew, one thing that they had talked about was Pokemon. And so with Pokemon being out there, it was animal cruelty, and they weren't sure because Pokemon Go had come out and you become obsessed with those games. I guess another question I would have is when do you, as a parent, decide that this became a really weird parenting with Anthony and Ben?
Yeah.
But no, when do you think is a good age to introduce like a Game Boy, like their own personal gaming system? Like we had a Super Nintendo when I was 5 that we shared amongst everyone.
Yeah.
But when do you give them that first device? But granted, a phone, I mean, they'll grow up with the iPhone and iPad.
Yeah. Which my approach is going to be different than a lot of other people, or maybe the silent majority, that I don't plan on giving them any sort of iPad or telephone or anything to shut them up. Like it's, as a parent, deal with it, work with it, learn from it, work through it sort of thing. Don't just toss a piece of electronics in front of someone's face and dumb them down. But as far as like a Game Boy or something, even if it is a Game Boy, like an old color Game Boy, just to have them do something with, whether it's a Pokemon to play through or like a Bugs Bunny, that I know, like when I got my Game Boy, it was probably when I was, even as just, I think I got a color. It was either like, it was black and white, like one of the later black and whites. That I think I was maybe 7 or 8, whenever it actually came out. And like for me, it was like on car trips. Like I wasn't just posted up in my house playing a Game Boy.
Yeah, no,
It,
no.
it was like we're on a car trip, we're in the car going to the grocery store, we're in a vehicle where I can't go anywhere. I need to entertain myself. But like for me, like when I was at the house, that I would go outside, play, and make believe and yada yada. That I think is a lost art right now. But
Mm.
like even like for the Game Boy games I had, it was like there was like a Bugs Bunny game, there was a Pokemon game eventually. There's a Mario, which as far as a practicality standpoint, there's only so much you can really play as being invested.
Yeah.
Like it gets old after a while and you just put it down or
Repetitive.
you save it, you put it down and you just kind of do your own thing.
Mhm.
It's not like a lot of these games now where it's like an expansive universe of like an Assassin's Creed where you just get sucked into it and
Mhm.
you never know when you can save it or when it's going to save itself, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good thing to bring up because, like I said, I had a Game Boy from 5, but my parents never really. I know there had been points when they said, "Okay, you're done playing for right now,"
Mhm.
but I don't recall a time where I didn't. Because I mean, I loved to rollerblade as a
Mhm.
kid, so I would go outside and rollerblade with Addison or kids in the neighborhood, and I just remember there being a nice like. You really only played video games once the sun went down.
Mhm.
Because for the most part, you were outside playing after school or hanging out with people.
Mhm.
It never got to that point of like I mean I have relatives who weren't allowed to play video games at all, and then when the time came, they you couldn't rip them away from it. This is all they wanted to do. Whereas we had free reign on it. There was never a limit to it, and we were like, oh, you know, we could play video games today, or we could go outside and
Mhm.
just play in the mud because heck,
Yeah.
it's mud.
And even like for me, like I think we got like the early Super Nintendo because I've seen other people show their pictures and it doesn't look anything like mine.
Hmm.
But we had just the regular old Super Mario World, which there's only so much you can do or so much
Yeah.
you can understand at a time before you have to figure out after thinking about it or kind of working through how do I get like the secret key into the keyhole or like how do I do this sort of thing.
Hmm.
Which I mean, I didn't. I mean, I could have played all day. I could have sat there and flattened my ass. But it's just one of those things that I think it was just like the personal responsibility of, all right, this was fun. Let me save it and go wander around the house or go outside or something like that.
Yeah, we had other things to do.
Mhm.
But I also feel like right now we live in a world where parents are more afraid to let their kids go outside. Um, eh,
That's I seem to. It just seems like there's just the nosy neighbor mentality of like, why did you correct your kid? Why are you not why are you sitting on the porch while your kid's doing backflips in the yard? Why aren't you like holding their ass while they're doing backflips or something like that? It's
mhm.
like I don't need to hold somebody's hand as they meander around my own yard, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
but like I'm thinking, so I grew up in a small town,
Yeah.
Yellow Springs. You obviously know this,
Mhm.
but like we could get on our bikes and ride around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I would tell you right now, if I was not just being in Dayton, but
Mhm.
like I would not be okay with letting my kids, at a certain age. I mean, I was, from 7 till 10, or 7 years old to 10 years old. We were running around the neighborhood, and we didn't even tell people we went. We just went on adventures and played. Whereas now, I could see myself being more freaked out. Not that there wasn't. And this is gonna sound weird, like pedophilia, kidnappings, shootings, and stuff like that. Not like it didn't happen
Yeah.
before.
And that's something that I've thought about and struggled with too, is that as cloistered as we seem to be recently, like it, those things like always existed. It was
Mhm.
just one of those people were either naive or oblivious to that happen. Like I remember like riding my bike around to who knows where. Like I could walk in one of the many places we live, like walk from our house,
Mhm.
walk up to like the grocery store, like a candy store, spend some money and come back.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any fear of being harassed. I didn't have any fear of someone like rolling a van up and like putting a net around me and peeling me away sort of thing. It's
Mhm.
just I don't know either how that happened or like when it started happening that like
Well,
kids
see,
are just like having nets thrown around them and just
Mhm.
being yanked away.
Well, it was the idea that when something happened, you had to put it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So it had to either be a whole week or several hours before it could go up.
Mhm.
Then we had the news, and so if something happened, you'd find out about it at 5 or at 7. Now we have the internet, and you would see an article whenever you come across it. Now we have social media that alerts you when these things happen. So instead of it being like a thing that happens rarely because you only heard about it rarely,
Mhm.
now you find out about it in real time.
Yeah.
And everything is right next to you because our world is so small now. So something happens in Vegas, and people here are terrified,
Mhm.
and we're miles away, but it could still happen. And also, I would say that the world's a little bit more not unhinged, but I feel like the personality of our society right now seems like it would happen more often. Like the things that would have kept people from doing or acting out or saying certain things isn't that much. I'm rambling at this point, but
And like I know what you're going towards, but like even within like historical context,
Mhm.
that things that I guess I won't go into great detail, but things that like our generation of grandparents, whatever color skin they had, would say, and us as generation snowflake find acceptable are two different things. Like if you look at the old like Walt Disney cartoons where there's Indians flopping around and
Mhm.
animals being played as instruments, which is animal cruelty, and you're depicting either Native Americans or African Americans as different depictions. That within that historical context, it serves as historical context as an entertainment medium. Do we find it acceptable now? Obviously not.
Mhm.
But to have stuff like where we get wrapped around an axle of how offensive it is. Yes, today we find it offensive. Back then, it's entertainment. It's one of those things where you can look at any period of time and be like, I don't know that we should have called people Charlies. That's offensive to
Mhm.
them, even though we're at war with them, sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I completely get what you're
Mhm.
saying. And like you said, as we there's always that culture shock or culture
Mhm.
change of what we find offensive and not offensive. Um, that was actually a really good way of putting it. Like you're right. What is entertainment? What was unfortunately the status quo? Not saying it's right.
Mhm.
I look at old cartoons of black people and they have the giant lips.
Mhm.
They're usually homeless or they look like gorillas. You know.
Eating watermelon, stealing pies, stuff
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And I'm obviously not trying to drag this out farther because we're kind of getting away from where we want to be. But I don't know where I read it recently, but it's like with the political correctness that we are um, working towards, that the author was, I guess, trying to allude to that how far away from either end we're getting. I mean, we're obviously swinging to the one end, but like jokes, like I'm not gonna like make any sort of illusion of whatever jokes I can
Mhm.
make up, but it was like the humor itself and whatever uh, racist, or I guess not racist, but whatever undertones you want to insert into a joke as humor, like has always been humor. Like it's meant to be a humor. You get a little bit like you might get a little bit itchy about it, but it goes away. But for people to fixate on whatever is humor that's meant to be glancing and fixate on it is kind of what pulls away from anyone being able to have like these glancing remarks that just go away.
Mhm.
Like,
Well, I would say back then. So let's pull up
mhm,
an old. So the okay. So for example, old Bugs Bunny cartoons.
mhm,
They depicted Asians. So the
yeah,
Japanese as like they had fangs. They had the super squinty eyes, and that was war propaganda at the
mhm,
time. And so the humor of it was this is what we were calling our enemy. Our enemy was this. Whereas nowadays, it's not so much the back then there was a reference to
mhm,
that. Here in this current day and age, jokes are made with the intention of like it isn't just something to get brushed off. Like it's actually something to like you purposely are saying some like a stereotype. It's
mhm,
not like the visual of it. Whereas back in the old days, even in racist times, the old cartoons, they didn't go out of the way to say, look at black people are this, black people are
mhm,
lazy. They drew it as that, so you had to come to that conclusion yourself.
yeah,
Nowadays, it's almost as if it's stupid humor. You have to point it out. Like the
mhm,
whole point is not to show you; it's to say, "Hey, look at this." I have to like point out I have to like give you the bullet points of the joke.
yeah.
But you're right.
And
We got really way off, way off topic.
I think I'm gonna say my last thing, and then we can kind of loop
Yeah.
back into where you wanted to be. I saw John Cleese recently, which is obviously a Monty Python fame,
Mhm.
fame, and it was more of a Q&A, and the question I posed on a piece of paper that I think they only skirted about was as far as the Monty Python cast and crew and everything they produced, like it's timeless humor from that point onward, but like it's stuff like, could you have made Monty Python sort of stuff in today's day and age with everyone being very uptight about who they offend, which lends itself to whether the Mel Brooks movies, one movie in particular, could have been made today and still had the same effect of humor.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like in 2017, Blazing Saddles is not going to be able to ring bells and call N-words around and rescue handcarts with people being jokingly led into quicksand sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I would say Blazing Saddles, in response to that, is it was a satire of racism versus it just being like jokes, like blatant racist jokes just to like get people to like you said, itch. Yep. This was like, this is literally how stupid racism is.
But in 2017, could we have had Blazing Saddles?
Because people wouldn't be able to get past wouldn't get past the intro of it. But I mean, no, it's. I mean, people are sensitive because of what came before it. Before you weren't able to say anything, and so now you can, and so you don't want there to be any humor at all except for your humor, and that goes for everybody. Everyone is allowed to be funny except when it's at their expense. Yep. And that's really it. But no, we're gonna reel it in just a little bit. We are at 40 minutes, so I'd say we'll get another 10 minutes to asking Papa Ben some questions.
I guess one question. I guess I'm obviously not going to steal your question, but you'd I guess pose the question off air, off camera, whatever we're using, about like the toys themselves. So like in my, I guess I'll call it a toy room, even though it's an office that has toys in it, that I have my old Power Ranger stuff in it, which like to me is were toys at one point, but now they're not toys anymore. But obviously there's like an age range that's suggested on Power Rangers toys where they're either like the die-cast metal now that they're being reproduced, or the old crusty plastic that just gets super old and worn out and crackety.
It gets light and it cracks.
It's stuff like that I don't know that I want to be played with, but I think as I get older and maybe it starts to get played with, I may not be as uptight about it.
That's a really good question. Because
like I have old like Turtles figures too, which I could honestly care less whether play the hell out of them. I played the hell out of them, so
yeah, that's a really good question. Like there's an age range. Like I have some Dragon Ball Z toys that I would be hesitant to give my kid until they were, until I knew they were past the age of like popping heads off, because I think I would still get angry. Like that's my future Trunks. Like I had to wait, until Christmas to get that. I think like Legos are the really only thing I can think of that I would pop out for my, like that I wouldn't have a feeling of preserving. Yeah. Because that is something that our generation has that others don't. Like we grew up playing with my uncles and aunts and my parents' toys at my grandma's house.
Like the Tonka and stuff like that.
Yeah. And, they didn't care because they moved past it. I don't. I mean, I haven't. I still look at all my toys and I can remember the last time I played with them, or when they were important to me. And I was like, I don't. It's like pop figures. I have a ton of pop figures. And Abby asked, eventually our kids are gonna come and see we don't have kids, by the way. Just want to point out there, but eventually they're going to want to play or mismatch or and. She made a point one time where she came in when I was like taking a shower and she moved things around and I was like, "What are you?" And then she's like, "You have to get used to it. Like, kids are gonna do that." So I don't know. I think I'm gonna be weird about it. I don't want to be, but I mean, it's kind of hard to have a collection of toys and not let a child play with them.
Yeah, which I think is the difference between like our parents, where I don't know that they collected toys to show off.
Yeah, they didn't collect. There was nothing to collect.
Just you got your like 10-cent action figure and you played the shit out of it
until it fell apart.
Yeah.
And now I have things that we don't touch.
Stuff that stays in its little blistered Carter pack. Hearted blister pack.
Yeah. Well, that's and you have like so I want to compare so like Travis. Travis had his all his Power Ranger stuff.
Yeah.
But you could tell that it was just kind of him because with me and Addison, it went through two different people and our toy like we had the old Flip Rangers, so when their heads would flip, they didn't stand a chance at all. Because they're just getting ripped apart by two different people.
Yeah, I mean, even it's my brother and I. He's younger, and I don't think much of our stuff got the shit beat out of it. Like we were responsible with it because we knew as soon as it got beat up, we didn't have it anymore.
I mean, it wasn't even. I don't. Like we.
I mean, it got played with hard, but
Yeah,
we didn't like bang it against walls or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know Addison had his like weird like teething thing, like he would chew on toys.
Yeah.
So like after a while, we had to get separate things that he wasn't allowed to touch because he would then like chew on the feet or something like that, and it would drive me absolutely nuts. And that's what I'm afraid of with my kids. It's like, don't chew on my stuff. Like, I don't know, leave it be. But they'll have their own things. And but here's the other idea. How would you get? Okay, so how am I gonna say this? So like with toys and like we said, collecting. Most figures say collect them all. Like there's a series. Can you distance yourself from like, oh, your son collects these or likes these toys? Do you go out and buy an entire set? Like as you go out, you're like, oh, we need that to complete the series, or do you just buy the one that your child wants?
I think coming from that toy collecting realm where like I had that itch bad where I had to be a completionist, and I've just like it doesn't affect me anymore. Like I don't even know that I've bought anything recently that's like Dunny or Kid Robot or designer toy related.
Yeah.
So like from a practicality standpoint, like why complete the set if the kid doesn't want that thing? So like I mean, if they want the pink ambulance and they want to play with it, buy the pink ambulance. I'm not going to buy the fire truck if they could care less about it.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. Unfortunately, I will probably be that person. It's like, well, you want the fire truck too? We'll get all of them. But yeah, so I mean, I think this was actually an interesting conversation. This is something we don't usually do on this podcast. Normally we go through the news or we talk about trailers and stuff like that.
I thought about how I could wrap this around, like with the Blazing Saddles and everything else, is how to preserve the context of like a Blazing Saddles or old Walt Disney cartoons to a kid, because when say I'll stick with Blazing Saddles, which people may agree or disagree with the movie itself. Like for a kid that is say 15 years old, which is 15 years from now, which means Blazing Saddles being made in the 70s is 40 plus years old at that point. How you establish a context within this child from this movie that the movie itself was satire and not just run around saying the N-word and stuff like that because the movie said it.
Well, the approach will be two completely different things. So your approach will be completely different than mine. Mine will be under the idea of this is satire of how, like I said before, how stupid racism is and how there's no backing to it and how ridiculous it actually is.
Which becomes a recursive conversation of explaining to a child that has no context what racism is.
Yeah, well, it depends on my kid will most likely have an idea of it. I mean,
which is unfortunate because kids across any sort of skin color don't know what racism is until it's explained to them.
They know what race is. They not saying you didn't mention that, but like they can get that. Like you said, it's racism. It's the hate of the other or like. I mean, I remember being in school, and so say there was a black kid, an Asian kid, and a white kid. The black kid and white kid would then, just because they were friends, then isolate one. Not because he was different, but because it was based on your friendship. It's not like you couldn't hate. Hate is learned as a child, but it's hate because of the way you look, not just because they dislike you. But no, so back to the idea of Blazing Saddles, it's going to be something where it's like you're going to hear things that will hurt you. So like for me, I don't use the N-word because it hurts. I don't find it as funny. Ultimately, I don't find it funny. But then you have like some kids who I have cousins who, it is more funny because Dave Chappelle says it. Kevin Hart used to say
There's
it.
an A on the end. It's not
Yeah,
offensive.
and then you'll say, yeah, there's an A on the end, or you'll hear there are two types of black people, and it's like, okay, that joke was kind of funny when Chris Rock said it because it was him saying it, but you saying it's not as funny. But yeah, like there's just, I mean, your conversations with race will be more effective than what mine will be because mine will be, son, this is how you live with it, whereas your conversation is how we end it. I think that's kind of an interesting thing. I know a lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's the white savior thing," but no, your child will be the one that ends that cycle versus where mine, I have to explain to him how to live in that world and not let it get to him.
Which is the stomping out of one racism and the beginning of trying to understand the other racisms that unfortunately exist everywhere. Where if, I guess, in this, I guess, isolated example, the white and the black, now we have the Hispanic, now we have Native American, now we have the Indian, now we have the Asian, now we have starting somewhere, I guess, or just globally knock it out in the perfect situation of.
Yeah, and there will never be a perfect situation. There's always going to be the other. For the most part, it was African Americans, and then once I would say around April or something like that, it's when definitely November is when Hispanics got hit really hard, and then it became a weird thing. And then a little bit after that, then it was Middle Eastern and Middle Eastern after 9/11. I mean, because I'll be honest with you, I cannot think of knowing anyone from the Middle East before 9/11. Because that didn't stand out to me. I wasn't looking for people like that. Is that it? I don't know if that sounds weird or not, but like I don't remember meeting anyone who was Middle Eastern or anything like that. And I definitely knew people who were, but it didn't click with me that they were.
I think this becomes a function of us living in cornbread America is what it becomes. It's a mild function of, like in Yellow Springs or in Wilmington, Ohio. I mean, I guess granted, the high school that I went to had less than a handful of people that were not white. So then to further go from 180 people that are seniors graduating to a handful of people that are not white to less than a handful that are any of the given minorities, then you kind of either get to be the one kid who's or Middle Eastern, or you get to be the zero kid. So it's either one or zero or maybe two.
Yeah. I mean, growing up in Yellow Springs, there were. You heard people made jokes like that. I mean, it's like now I don't say like I wouldn't call someone a faggot, or you say, oh, dude, that's gay. Like that used to be something we said in high school, and now I look back and it's like, wow, what a douchebag little kid I was. Like,
I think that also, I guess, unfortunately, that plays into the naivety of how pronounced the community of the LGBTQ, whatever other letters there are, how vast that community was of people that were closeted at that time and still are. So like even like when Ellen came out, or the Sam Shepard, I think his name was, where he was the kid in like the Rocky Mountain area where he was gay and he just got dragged out into a field by a truck and just killed by some people. It's just that sort of thing where, like, prior to like the Columbine sort of stuff, mass shootings were few and far between reported and isolated. The same that like hate crimes against the homosexual community were isolated and few and far between and stuff like that, until it started getting more national light as far as what was going on.
And I think even with that, the thing that made it scarier and it was more not sadder, but that's not the right word. It was difficult to look about it because a lot of that was family on family. Like you would find out your child was gay, and then there you go you would attack or hurt them. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. But this turned out to be a very serious.
I'm really sorry.
No. That's fine. This is completely different than what we normally do on this podcast. Like I mentioned a little bit ago. But we have almost at the hour mark. I guess we record this without the intro and everything, so we're probably at the hour mark. But no, so we'll wrap this one up.
To be continued.
Yeah, to be continued. We have we're gonna go with Papa Ben, and then the
All
next
right.
one we'll do a one post child.
All right, that's a month or so.
Yeah, before after Thor Ragnarok, we'll see.
It'll be after.
So
I still wouldn't have seen it. You would have seen it. You're gonna spoil it for me.
oh yeah, I definitely would. Everybody dies.
No.
But no. So Ben, where can people?
Soulstone. Where do you think it's gonna be?
Oh.
Because I've read online and it makes sense to me, but I guess we could either leave either we could guess, or we can watch the movie and be like, called it, or I screwed that one up.
Where would the Soul Stone be? Wait, hold on. Do you think it's in Mulmir?
No,
Okay. Where do you think it is?
I posit it is in Hannibal Lecter's eye patch. That is how he can control worlds by himself and bestow the gatekeeper his power to be able to see everything. I don't think it's in the gatekeeper at all.
Oh, Heimdall.
Yeah, I don't think it's in Heimdall at all.
Okay.
I think it's bestowed upon him by the Allfather,
Mm-hmm.
which is why he has to go to like the Allfather sleep, which I thought was part of like the Marvel lore of like how the Soul Stone sucks it from you. You have to sleep for a while and get your power back, and
Yeah.
then you can go back to ruling your realms.
That would be that's actually a really cool idea.
Bet you didn't see that coming if it's in his eye patch.
Okay. Okay, Ben. So where can people find you on the social medias?
The social medias, I'm BTP_UVD on the Instagram. Otherwise, Urban Vinyl Daily is just Urban Vinyl Daily on Instagram and Twitter. And the YouTube, we are UVD's Weekly Wrap Up.
All right. And then you can find me at token_nerd on both Facebook and Instagram, or Instagram and Twitter, and we're token. Good, I cannot talk.
Face cake.
Yeah, face cake. No, it's Token Nerd 00 on Facebook. We are on YouTube, which you're listening to this. We're also on Podbean and iTunes. Yeah.
Do people comment on these?
I've gotten a couple, not a ton. I don't know if you guys get a lot of comments on
Every once
yours.
in a while, but I'll encourage people to let me know as some old fart at 31 and Anthony at 26. I guess what you want us to tackle next, as far as if our fake parenting
Yeah, so the next,
insight.
So the next Anthony and Ben episode, what real issues you want us to cover? As two geeky adults, one of us walking into parenthood, the other just walking. All right, folks. As always, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Ben.
Stay spicy, my friends.
Hey everyone, this is Travis Likens from Token Nerd Podcast, and I'm here today to tell you something about sponsorship. That's right, Token Nerd now has a sponsor. The fine folks at TenaciousToys.com, your source for designer toys, pop vinyl, original art, and more, are now our sponsor. And guess what? As a part of that, you can get 10% off your next order at TenaciousToys.com by entering the code TOKEN10 at checkout. That's right, 10% off. And not only are they giving you this code, they're also going to be sponsoring many of our Token Nerd giveaways in the next coming months. So make sure to follow us at token_nerd on Instagram to catch our latest giveaways.